Active recall techniques, study tips, active learning strategies. Learn my active recall techniques now. You get more from a book by recollecting what you have read rather than reviewing the book repeatedly. In this video, we'll examine our learning strategies. By the end of this video, you will get many tactics to optimize your studying and reading habits. I predict you will implement some of these ideas right away. I have been in the learning and development space for over 20 years now, training young cabin crew to senior leaders in practically every facet of business area. How we learn always fascinates me and is a subject very close to my heart. I will share methods that will soar your studying abilities by making simple tweaks to your approach. Whether you are a student, leader, manager, facilitator, or content creator, this video will give you something you can take home. Stick until the end, where I will share a page from my recall journal and 3 simple techniques sitting right under your nose that can be a game changer. You can find any information, concept, or ideas on Google on demand with a smartphone, right? Despite this unbelievable capacity, the average person is not 100 times brighter than a generation ago. Why? Because being able to look things up is undoubtedly an advantage, but with a certain amount of knowledge inside your brain, you can solve complex problems. Remember, knowledge is not power, it is potential power. It only becomes power when you use it and apply it to real situations. That's why I believe in practical advice that you can use to improve your life. We have been learning for years and need to be more informed about what produces results. Let me set the ball rolling by asking you a hypothetical question. Imagine you are preparing for an exam and have finished reading the required book. If you could pick only one choice, which would be your choice to do best in the exam? The choices are: number 1, review your highlights in the book, look over your notes, and repeatedly review everything until you are sure. This technique is called reviewing. The second choice is test yourself. Shut the book and try to remember what you've studied. This technique is called free recall. The third choice, you can write out the main concept as a visual or diagram, showing how each idea is organized and related to other concepts. This technique is called concept mapping. Please pause the video and think about your preferred learning strategy. If you are like most students and me, you will choose option 1. Conventional wisdom tells us that repeated reviewing leads to better outcome. Hold on and please wait before you form an opinion. Let me rephrase the same question. And let's now try to rank those 3 choices. To rank the 3 choices, what would be your ranking order from best to worst choice? Pause the video and think about it. Welcome back. Let me guess. Your first choice would be reviewing. The best option would be to review the material and notes until everything is perfect and you can remember it. The second most appropriate choice would be to do concept mapping. Your third choice would be to remember as much as possible without looking at the book. This choice would be the worst because your chances of scoring well are low. Here is an eye-opener. According to research, free recall is the best choice, followed by concept mapping, and frequent reviewing is the low efficiency option. Let me repeat. According to research, free recall is the best choice, followed by concept mapping and then reviewing. Research has repeatedly shown that when you try to retrieve information without looking at the text, outperforms all other conditions. Free recall can help you remember almost 50% more than other methods. I'm sure you would like to argue the ranking order. You have the right to be skeptical, but give it a thought before you discard this approach. Active recall helps me remember more things and connect better with my past and future learnings. I have tried active recall with participants in the classroom and I have seen better results. I have tested these concepts on myself with the number of books I read every year. I will talk about future learnings later in the video. Right now, let's find out why is active recall not our preferred strategy. Trying to dredge knowledge from memory is a powerful learning method. If retrieval practice or recalling facts and concepts from memory is so much better for learning, why don't most of us, including students, use it? Possible reasons. Many of us still think that concept mapping or even less effective repeated reviewing is better than closing the book and trying to recall. I call it a cognitive bias. Another explanation for choosing review, a less optimal method instead of retrieval, is that you feel you need to learn the material better before you can test yourself. It's a misconception. When studying a subject, you must know how well you have learned something. You judge your learning based on how fluently you can process the information. If you are making these judgments right after studying with a passive review strategy, of course you will convince yourself you've learned it. It's an incorrect judgment and incorrect assessment. It depends on when you are making these judgments, right after studying, after a couple of hours, or after a few days. Test your knowledge a few days later. Retrieval practice beats passive review hollow. Do you know the biggest drawback of repeated reviewing? If you keep reviewing the material repeatedly and frequently, you don't get any feedback to see what you know and what you don't know. For real learning to take place, it must lock in your long-term memory. So, when you review right after studying, you do not create long-term memory needed for actual learning to stick. So, what makes practicing retrieval so much better than reviewing? Whether you are ready or not, retrieval practice works better, especially if you combine retrieval with the ability to look up the answers. Retrieval practice is much better form of studying than most students apply. Enough research shows that when students force themselves to take practice retrieval early, they learn more and perform better in the tests. The biggest problem with learning is knowing where you stand or how much learning has taken place, isn't it? When you do any kind of self-testing or recall, you create a kind of feedback for yourself to see where you stand. Active recall or self-testing creates a simulated environment for how you will use the information you have learned. Retrieval is more complicated than passively reviewing. A more difficult retrieval leads to even better learning, provided the act of retrieval is successful. So, the difficulty is not an obstacle that makes retrieval more efficient. Instead, it is why it is so efficient. I love this thought. Let me repeat. So, the difficulty is not an obstacle that makes retrieval more efficient. Instead, it is why it is so efficient. I must add a disclaimer here. The difficulty can become undesirable if it gets so hard that retrieval becomes impossible. However, the information may be lost altogether if you delay the self-test too long. So, you should always find the happy medium of your difficulty. It should be far enough to make you think deeply, not so far away that you have forgotten everything. Did you know that giving someone a test immediately after they learn is less effective than giving them a slight delay long enough so that the answers aren't in the mind when they need them? Remember that taking a self-test or active recall is not only a source of learning, but results in more learning than similar amount of time spent in review. Don't get me wrong. Get your essential knowledge first, then strengthen it with self-test or retrieval. Here is a pro tip: how to make retrieval even more efficient. Increase the difficulty of retrieval. Low intensity learning strategies typically involve either less or easier retrieval. Pushing difficulty higher and opting for testing oneself well before you're ready is even more efficient. Remember, in the beginning of the video I talked about future learning? So let me talk about future learning now. The benefit of retrieval even goes one step further. Retrieval helps enhance what you have learned previously and can even help you prepare to understand better for the future. In other words, retrieval improves future learning even when there is nothing to retrieve. Let me explain with an example. For example, I'm trying to learn Notion app. I wanted to increase my level of difficulty. I needed to understand the entire application before dabbling with formulas. However, I chose to jump straight to formulas first. I did not have any knowledge and had nothing to retrieve. I was experimenting with retrieval for future learning. I explored and read a few articles on simple formulas. I got little or nothing out of it, but now had a rough idea what the formulas could do and should do for me. One day I just encountered a little advice or information and I could immediately put two and two together. I had already primed my mind for future learning by actively recalling what I had read, though I didn't understand it fully. Whether this makes sense to you or not, it is another point in case of active recall. By confronting a problem without knowing the answer, my mind automatically adjusted its attention to resources that could help me with a solution the moment I encountered it. So, how do I practice retrieval? We have already established that passive review is straightforward but not an efficient method. Retrieval works, but it's hard, and that's why it is so efficient. Here are some ways I apply retrieval in almost any subject. Number 1, flashcards. Flashcards are a simple way to learn. It's great for memorizing the vocabulary or syntax of a formula. I use flashcards for the specific type of retrieval when there is a pairing between a particular question and response. If the situation in which the information is variable, flashcards have drawbacks, but it's an excellent technique to keep it in your back pocket. Second retrieval technique: cued recall and free recall. It is a simple tactic for retrieval after reading a section from a book or sitting through a lecture. Try to write down everything you can remember on a blank paper. When I read a book for the very first time, I keep a blank paper next to me. I don't take active notes while reading as it distracts my attention from understanding. However, I write down a keyword that stands out while reading. Then I create a concept map by connecting all the keywords, later a cued recall. Let me show you in my journal how it looks like. So I maintain a journal like this, and this journal was started in May, but I've been doing this for years now. I write down a keyword that stands out while reading, then create a concept map by connecting all the keywords later. So this is a cued recall. After a few days, I would indulge in free memory recall without aid. It works well for me when I'm reading a new book. Handwritten recollections have the maximum impact with the ability to look up the answers from the source if required. The third method of retrieval is the question method. Taking notes in the form of questions. I use the question method in two ways. Before reading a book, I create questions in my mind. When reading the book, I look for answers to those questions. I prime my mind to find answers to my questions while reading. Another way I use question method is to summarize the section as a question on a paper instead of taking notes. While preparing for this video, I had done a similar exercise. Instead of saying the benefits of retrieval are better memory, enhanced recollection, and superior learning, I would rephrase it as a question. What are the benefits of retrieval? and then try to answer it in your own words. It is even harder and more valuable to restate the big idea of a chapter in a single question. It forces me to think deeply as opposed to just copying notes verbatim. When I think of answers to these questions, I practice an advanced level of retrieval skills. Isn't it a cool technique? Okay, let's do a quick recap. Free recall can help you remember almost 50% more than other methods. Active recall helps you to learn better, past and future learning. We don't use active retrieval because of cognitive bias, misconceptions, and misjudgments. Recalling as much as you can remember without hints result in better retention. Nearly any learning activity can become an opportunity for retrieval if you pay attention to cut off the hints. By preventing yourself from consulting the source, the information becomes knowledge stored inside your head instead of the book. There are 3 ways to practice retrieval: flashcards, free recall, and the question method. Retrieval is such a powerful technique sitting right under our noses that we need to leverage its full power. Retrieval benefits not only past learning but also future learning. If you are finding value in this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, share it with a friend, like it, and even better, click on the bell icon to get notified whenever I publish new video. Thank you. Stay safe. All the best. See you next time.